We continue. It is the Jake Asman Show here on the Sports Map Radio Network. And now joining us on our progressive guest line is actually the very first guest I ever had when I moved here to Houston to start doing radio. At the time, he joined us on SB Nation Radio. Now we're Sports Map Radio, but he's still nice enough to come back on. He is Super Bowl champion, the pride of Hofstra himself, the great Willie Colon, with us here on the show. Willie, appreciate your time, my man. Thanks for coming back.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I want to start with Hofstra, actually, because as someone who grew up on Long Island, I used to love going to Hofstra football games. And the history, for those who don't know nationally, of Hofstra football, a small school on Long Island, it's tremendous. You, Wayne Corbett, Marcus Colston, plenty of other guys as well. Willie, the program's been gone since 2009. How do we get it back?
It's heartbreaking, man. Every guy that I still keep in contact with who played at Hofstra, from guys before me and after me, they want it back, and they're willing to do whatever it takes on their end to kind of make that happen. They don't mind if the program went D3 or D2 just to kind of restart or reset. But there's so much history, there's so much tradition. Me being a father now, I have a young son and I have another one coming in, a daughter coming in July. I want to be the football. I want to be football royalty. I want to be able to see my jersey hanging somewhere in Hofstra Stadium and. So they can see that their dad was an ass kicker. He just wasn't some, big belly, big dude who just said he played football, that there's living proof of it. And every football player wants that. So, Long Island, believe it or not, man, when the community's into it, they're into it. They kind of dive into any local program that's doing well. You can see it in Hofstra men's basketball. When those guys get hot, it starts buzzing around the city. You see them pop up in the paper. And people from Long Island start wearing the blue and yellow for a quick moment. So I wish he could come back. I don't know. I've poked the bear enough, and I've hit a couple walls. So whenever it happens, it happens. As of right now, I don't know if it's going to happen.
Now, looking at your playing career, I have to imagine being born in the Bronx and, of course, going to Hofstra, getting a chance to play for the hometown team, getting a chance to finish your career with the Jets. I mean, that must have just been an unbelievable moment for you and your family.
Yeah, I think me going home was more I think it was just more an indictment that I still had enough in the tank to keep going, right? A lot of guys who, some guys keep playing to just play, and the other guys play just so they can continue to cash checks, to feel, when I hung up the phone from Mike Tomlin, who had released me, it was 15 minutes later that it was Rex Ryan calling me, telling me to come be a Jet. So it feels good to be wanted, and I had played a lot of football. I had, been on IR a bunch. So to still feel wanted and be wanted at home with guys who I had a lot of respect for. You talking about DeBrickashaw Ferguson, Nick Mangold, and Darrell Revis and David Harris, and those guys who I really admired their game and respected them as ball players. So having the opportunity to play with them meant something to me. And obviously me going to Hofstra and watching the boys do summer camp, running around, there was a sense of nostalgia there. So I was happy.
I've always wondered with your career, because you played for Mike Tomlin, of course, you played for Rex Ryan as well. You played for two player coaches, both guys, though, very different, I'd imagine, in how they handle certain things. But what was it like to play for each one? What did you learn from being coached by Mike Tomlin? And what did you learn from being coached by a guy like Rex Ryan?
Well, I think Mike was in a different position because he was really taking over for Bill Cowher when he landed there. And Bill Cowher was actually my first coach. And, Bill was such a historic coach, and he had did so much for that franchise alongside of, for him, Bill was replacing Chuck Noll. There's only been 3 coaches in the history of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I, happened to be coached by Bill Cowher, and then when it was changing of the guard to have Mike Tomlin be the head coach, it was almost like we were starting together, and that meant a lot because he was a D1 AA guy, played at William & Mary. I was a D1 AA guy who played at Hofstra. He knew my plight, and he knew what I had to do to get to that point. So he had a lot of respect for me, and he honestly gave me a shot. He was like, "I'm gonna give you one shot. It's up to you what you do with it." And for me, it was I wasn't going home, and I was gonna fight anybody and everybody to remain a Pittsburgh Steeler. And I'm so in debt to Mike Tomlin, not just for his ability to be one of the best coaches in the NFL and then probably in franchise history. It was his ability to lead and lead in different ways. I think there's not one particular way a coach can lead. Sometimes you can talk to one guy one way and have to be able to talk to another guy another way. The ability to adjust, to be able to understand the temperature of the team, the ability to go after a certain guy to get a rise out of him, and also sometimes stepping back and letting the team maturate and move forward on its own. Not every team needs that coach that can kind of crack the whip. But he had all that. He had all that, and he had all that at a very young age. And so I was very proud to play for him because I felt like he was very direct. He didn't waste his words. He knew what he meant. He meant what he said, and he delivered. And I always took strength, and I always learned from that. And there was times where I know I didn't play my best ball, but he knew I would come out of it. And for a ball player, that means a lot because that just means he has faith in me, and he had great faith in my ability and what I could do for the team and how I could lead that room as a whole.
And as far as playing for Rex, is there a particular story or a memory that stands out?
Yeah, Rex, man, is tough because the Steeler-Baltimore rivalries. Rex was hated amongst us, right? Because he was the defensive coordinator. Right. So even when he landed with the Jets and he became this iconic figure, he was still running his mouth and kind of being that brass in your face Rex. But he represented New York. And even when I landed there, man, it was almost weird to see him because I had pictured him the enemy for so long. But talking to him and him realizing who I was and what I brought to the table, he was in love with me and I was in love with him because he was a guy who was going to give you his heart and give you his all. And Rex is probably the most loyalist coach I've ever played for or been around. Not only from him supporting the players and being down with guys through and through, but even the coaching staff, the guys who he has on his staff, he's loyal as shit to them. So it was just really tough to see him go because I knew if certain things would have happened better, Rex probably would have remained the head coach. If we would have won, he probably would have been the head coach. But I also think after a while, you guaranteeing wins, the team's not performing well, and and he's taking all this heat when the accountability should have really been in our locker room, but also the roster and the GM. We just my first year was 2013 with the Jets. We were just a couple of pieces away from being a solid contending team. We had enough veteran leadership to kind of get us over the hump. We just didn't have enough firepower on the offensive side of the ball, and we were starting a young quarterback in Geno Smith. But we had a defense was strong enough to kind of get us through, and it just didn't work out, and that kind of snowballed. But overall, man, Rex is somebody who I have so much admiration and love for because he believes in his players, and he'll go to the matches for each and every guy that's on his roster. And there's not a guy who you can say who's played for him can't say the same thing.
Willie Colon joining us here, the pride of Hofstra, Super Bowl champion, of course, former member of the Pittsburgh Steelers and the New York Jets. One final point on some of those Jets teams you're on, Willie. I got to ask, because it's just fascinating as a fan of the team. You're on that team in 2015. Todd Bowles is there, first-year head coach, of course. And the quarterback situation going into the year is Geno Smith and then Ryan Fitzpatrick as the backup. Right. What the heck happened? What was the reaction like in the locker room when IK Manapali punches out Geno, and then all of a sudden Geno's out, in comes Fitz, and you guys actually had, for a while there, a magical run going 10-6, and we know how it ended. We don't have to talk about that. But what was that moment in time like when Geno gets punched and Fitz becomes the starter?
Well, I think a lot of us felt a little bit of heartbreak for Geno, you know what I mean? Because, listen, aside for the incident, I don't like talking about the incident per se because I think certain things haunt players, right? And there's certain, like, for instance, Mark Sanchez will never get over the butt from him. And it's not his fault, right? Like, it just certain plays will forever haunt you. Russell Wilson will never give up. That play in the Super Bowl throwing that interception, Malcolm Brown picking it off, that'll always haunt him. Geno Smith getting punched in the face will forever haunt Geno. And that's troublesome because the kid he's a really good kid who's smart, who at the time just wasn't ready for the stage. And he was thrown out there because, that was just the circumstances that were thrown his way. On the flip side of that, here comes Ryan Fitzpatrick, who I had a lot of respect for and knew, because other guys, other offensive linemen who played with Ryan spoke highly of him, talking about, man, you're going to love this guy. He's fiery, he's fun, he's smart, he's a leader. My former offensive line coach, Sean Kugler, when I was at Pittsburgh, who actually was in Buffalo before Pittsburgh, coached alongside, was with Ryan in Buffalo and talked highly about him. So I kind of had a beat on him. And when he got in the locker room, one thing about Fitz does a really, really good job is really just being a guy's guy. You know, people know he's one of the smartest SOBs from a Wonderlic standpoint. People know that he has this kind of magical thing about him, but he never tries to overdo it. You know what I mean? He's just really fun. He's smart. He's great to be around. He's going to sling it. He's going to do it his way. And you kind of fall in love with him right away. And that's what happened when he got in there, and you know, we're in the huddle. He's making little jokes and he's making these faces, and he's kind of, you know, good quarterbacks have a way of kind of lowering the temperature in the huddle, right? Because you got receivers and running backs and offensive line. We all got to do our job. And when the stakes are high or you need a 3rd and 5, you know, you need that quarterback to either give you a wink or something to say, we're going to be all right. Fitz had that, or still has that because he's still playing. But I've been able to play with Ben Roethlisberger, Byron Leftwich, Michael Vick. They all have that ability to kind of cool the huddle down when everybody's kind of like, all right, well, we got to make a play. We need something. Kind of that manic feeling. They know how to calm it down. And Fitz had that. And so when we started seeing that, and when we started seeing his relationship with him and Nick Mangold, how they were so on point. Then you see Decker, how he was responding, and then B. Marsh. It was fun to watch. It was fun. He made it fun.
That season was so much fun until the way it ended. I'll never forget the high I had after the overtime win against the Wings. To follow that up with the Week 17 game, Willie, it still pains me today. And you can honestly make the argument the Jets have not been the same organization since that faithful Sunday game in Buffalo.
Well, listen, we've had 4 different head coaches, 9 different GMs or something ridiculous. Like it's not just the field, man. You know what I mean? Like it starts from the top. And that's why I'm really hoping and praying. I haven't had the opportunity to meet Joe Douglas. We know a lot of people in common. But I believe in Joe, man. He's somebody, when I knew we acquired him, not just because he's an offensive lineman. I just knew that he was going to bring something to the table. He's been able to do that thus far. And I think he's just getting started. You talk about, letting Sam go to Carolina, and what that means from an organizational standpoint is really you're saying, hey, man, we like you, but we don't love you. You know what I mean? We gotta go elsewhere just for the sake of this city. I'm in this city every day. I'm walking around. The Giants aren't doing great, but the Giants fans still believe. Jets fans are like, we'll believe when you give us a reason to believe. It's 2 different conversations. So Joe hears that. The media knows that. And I think what he's been able to do thus far with letting people go, resetting the roster, like once again, letting Sam go down to Carolina, have a fresh start, having 21 picks in the next 2 years. I mean, now he just has to deliver. Like now it's like, all right, the table's set. Now let's eat. Let's change the culture. Let's start getting ball players. Because that was the biggest thing with the Jets in the last 2 or 3 years. They've had C-level rosters, and now you can't compete in a division with Buffalo. Buffalo looks great. Miami, they look scary. The evil master, the head guy, Bill Belichick. He ain't going out like that. So how do you keep up? How do you keep up for the next 5 or 6 years? You got to start over. The problem with that narrative is the Jets have been starting over for a while. So it's really Joe has to. I don't know what you call those things, but you see him in the hospital shows where they shock the life. Yeah, that's what Joe has to do to his fan base. He has to be able to, take those electric prods and really jolt some life into this organization and this ball club. And that comes with getting draft picks who are excited, who want to play football, who love football, and who want to be a part of the future for the New York Jets.
Willie Colon with us here, of course, former Steeler, former Jet, now with Barstool Sports, so gracious with his time here on the show. Going off of what you just said about Jets GM Joe Douglas, he has 21 picks now over the next 2 years. But if he doesn't hit on the quarterback, Willie, it's the same thing all over again. So with the 2nd overall pick here, do you have confidence that Joe knows what he's doing, that if it is indeed Zach Wilson, that's the right guy to take here?
Jake, it's a lottery shoot picking a Super Bowl quarterback. Let's be honest. Like, as much as the Steelers would like to think, they didn't know they was going to hit a home run with Ben Roethlisberger. They just happened to. You talk about the same thing with Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson wasn't even, he was a fourth round pick, third round pick. They didn't think he was going to be a guy. He shows up, he balls out. So that's what you're hoping. You're hoping that you're really picking somebody who's going to change the game, who could do what the greats can do, or have the potential to do so. So I'm never high on drafting a quarterback that high. I just not. For me, you look at some of the teams that have been able to have success moving forward. You build within. We need an offensive line help. We need defensive line. I think our defensive line is pretty solid as of right now. I like the addition of bringing on Sheldon Rankin, but from an offensive line point, you got Becton on the left. Having a quality right tackle really caps that line, and you can dig in and get some guards or get some scrappy guards because you need protection. Sam never had protection. He never had the talent, and when there was talent, it just wasn't there when he was there. The kid popped up with Dan Mono, second year on the team. So it was a lot of things that Sam's way, whether his fault or not. But for this young kid, if it is going to be Zach Wilson coming out of BYU, you want to put him in a car that can drive. You don't want to put him in a car that it may break down a mile down the road. So that's what they got to think. That's what they got to do.
Willie, a quick offensive line question for you. So you mentioned Mekhi Becton. I mean, you are the perfect person to ask. When you watch him play, how good can he be? Some already see him as one of the best left tackles in football. Is he already that? And how much better can this kid still be going forward?
Well, he's a puppy, right? He's just a big puppy. He's a big old kid. I think his family, his mom, if I understand, they have a catering business, and it's a soul food catering business. So he's going to be thick for a good portion of his career. The problem with Mekhi is he has to understand with all those, the long arms, the good footwork, the ability to throw guys from left to right. As time goes, you're going to have to really focus in and hone in on your technique. And that comes with training. That comes with make sure your body's in shape to do what you needed to do on Sunday. So he just has to mature. I like watching him play, and I think a lot of people get enamored with him just pancaking guys, or he's just playing. He hasn't really done anything. Like when you watch Joe Thomas play, and I love Joe Thomas, I love Jason Ogden, Walter Jones. When they got into the middle of their career, they really honed in on their technique. So when it came time to use the muscle or use their God-given ability, they had ways to tap into that. But that necessarily wasn't their kind of their go-to. They were trained. They made a living using proper technique, and letting their technique beat the guy. Mekhi is letting his God-gifted ability beat DNs up. The problem with that also is, you're going to go against some DNs who make a lot of money to make sure that, your God-given ability doesn't work against them. And that's when your technique has to show up. So he has to just put his game together, watch his weight. I was a guy who struggled with my weight late in my career just because my knees went bad, and it was hard to kind of, really keep up with the cardio and the maintenance of doing what I needed to do on Sunday. But he has to just keep his weight down. He may have to tell mama, that big tray of banana pudding, I don't need that. I got Baltimore next week, mama. I don't need this big tray of banana pudding. But I'm fascinated with him. I know a guy who I know his trainer. Shout out to Duke. And so he talks highly about him, and he's just a sweet kid, mean guy on the edge. And for him to play a long time, it's going to be how he treats his body and how he dives into his technique. There's a lot of good tape on a lot of good tackles who've done it for a long time. Tyron Smith for the Cowboys played at a high level for a long time. So he just had with a guy for him. If I'm him, I'm spending summers at Jonathan Ogden's house. Because he reminds me of a young Jonathan Ogden. I watched Jonathan Ogden, play. We've had to play him twice a year, and we had a lot of bruises on defense. And I've seen Jonathan Ogden fold some of our outside linebackers like lawn chair furniture. So he just has to get on, understand the league, man. There's a lot of tape to teach a lot of young guys how to do it a particular way and how to survive. Guys just have to kind of dig into the crates and learn a little bit.
Willie, this was a ton of fun. My friend, thanks you so much for being so gracious with your time, catching up here, and tell people where they can find you with everything you guys got going on with Barstool.
Yeah, so Willie Colon 66 on Instagram and Twitter, man. with Barstool, just working it out, throwing out some blogs, putting out content. You could always see me doing something wacky and fun, and just got a lot more in store.
Thanks for watching the full YouTube video. If you like what you saw, then please subscribe to my page for more content. Thank you.